Hi, I'm Greg Lefebvre, creator and host of the Compulsive Storyteller podcast. Welcome to another segment of Pass the Mic, where we introduce talented guests, artists, writers, actors, musicians, and others to join us on the pod to tell a great story and/or to chat with me about the art of storytelling. I'm excited to introduce today's guest, Andrew Psomas, multimedia artist, music producer, and the creator of Somo Domo's Dogman World. Hi, Andrew. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Greg. I wanted to tell a story of when I met one of my idols when I was younger, someone I really looked up to, and the horrifying thing that happened when I finally got the chance to meet him.
Sounds good.
Great. So I think it's important to have some context. Growing up, I was really very shy. I was afraid of just about everything and anything. I had an older brother and sister, and they took up a lot of space, and I just kind of wanted to sit in the background and hide. I just did everything that my brother did. First, it was like watch ESPN in the mornings, and he became a really big Yankee fan, and I was like, I'm going to be a Yankee fan too. I actually used to carry a ball around with me everywhere I went, a ball and a glove, and that's how I connected with people because I was too afraid to have conversations. I was just like, "Hey, you want to have a catch with me?" And then I would just have a catch with people, and they'd be like, "Oh, you have a nice arm," and I'd be like, "Oh, yeah," and it felt good. And for me, that was a way that I built up my confidence as a kid. So sports for me was like the only thing that got me out of my shell. I ended up playing just about every sport, like soccer, baseball, football. I even did ballet, tennis, and the big one was wrestling. So originally wrestling wasn't huge for me, but there's something about it. It really stuck with me. I liked the one-on-one aspect because if I won a match against someone, it was like I got all the glory, and it was a way for me to like get my confidence up. So I really stuck with wrestling, and I got dedicated to it. Penn State was the big team at the time. They were champions like years and years in a row. And there was this one guy, David Taylor, that I was obsessed with. He was like LeBron James to a basketball player for me. Wrestling was really tough. It's like a really grueling sport, a lot of intensity. We would train for hours, and then there's like weight cutting. Basically, you have to keep your weight down after training for many hours. And in other sports, you might have a hard practice and then you drink lots of fluids and eat. But in wrestling, you might have to just starve for the whole night until you weigh in. So that's part of the culture of wrestling, is like starving yourself and then eating a whole lot of food to make sure that you are as big as you can be for your weight class, because in theory, if you are heavier than the people in your weight class after you weigh in, then you have an advantage.
Got it. Yep.
Right. So it was a lot of like starving and then eating, and my stomach was just like in shambles, a lot of the time. So I wrestled a lot in high school.
So it's funny. I was a wrestler too in high school, and I only had really one move. I'd be on all fours, and the guy would be next to me with his hand, around me. The position I'm talking about.
Right. From bottom, basically. Right. Yeah.
And I would grab the hand with my hand underneath my stomach and then roll away from him
Right.
so it would flip him,
Right.
which was
It's
a pretty standard move.
Peterson, they call that.
Is that what it's called? Yeah. And I got away with it a couple times, but as soon as I got a little bit more advanced competition, forget it. They turned it around, and I was pinned in no time.
Yeah, it's like a sort of a risky move, because
It
if
is. Yeah.
if you screw it up, then you might end up on your back.
Yes.
And yeah,
Exactly. Exactly.
yeah. And I sort of had a boring high school. I used to study a lot. I got pretty good grades, and I just wanted to be really good at wrestling and good at school. I figured if that worked out, then I would go to a good college, and it would all work out. But I got so much into wrestling. I would just like come home from school and watch wrestling videos. And I got so passionate about it. I was like, I think I'm just going to go to Penn State and become a national champion and then become a coach after that. And that was my plan. So after all that training, I got pretty good. I was one of the best in the state, and I was talking to colleges about recruitment. And my wrestling style was like a carbon copy of this guy, David Taylor, that I loved. I used to move like him, and I would do all the same techniques as him. Like I even copied his facial expressions, and I just had this philosophy that to be the best, I had to act like the best. So I was starting to get better results, and I was getting more confidence in myself. So I wasn't as shy as I was when I was a kid. And each summer in between high school years, I went to wrestling camps, and there was like 3 or 4 workouts a day. And in between that, it was a giant dining hall buffet, which was pretty awesome. I just got to eat unlimited amounts of food as a high schooler. That was like one of the best things you could give me. But it was crazy workouts. This one that I remember was I love to tell people because it's just kind of crazy. We used to do stair workouts on the bleachers. We would carry each other like on our backs or in front, like they're called wedding carries, and we would run up the stairs with someone like that. And it was like really intense workouts. We would get so sweaty, we would wring out our shirts after the practices. There would be like kids crying and dropping out of the camp. So I went to like North Dakota, Oregon, upstate New York, and finally my last year I got to go to Penn State. So I felt really at home at Penn State. It was just after all the years of watching them and sort of dreaming about it, I felt comfortable there. So we stayed in the dorms and wrestled in the gym. It was like a technique camp, so it wasn't as rigorous as the other ones, but I definitely took all the leftover intensity to the dining hall. So a different wrestler taught each session. For me, I mean, I know it doesn't sound crazy for anybody else, but like with the amount of time that I spent watching these guys, it was like being behind the scenes of my favorite TV show. I had spent the year before that camp meeting a couple of famous people, celebrities, because my uncle was working for a media company. I was starting to build up the courage to talk to people. I was coming out of my comfort zone. So I was doing the same thing to the wrestlers that I met at Penn State. It was really awesome experience, but it was the last day, and I still didn't get to meet David Taylor. And I was like wondering, I was like, am I going to get to meet David Taylor? This guy's my idol. So I had a giant breakfast because it was the last day. I was like, I need to make sure that I make the most of this dining hall. They had the culinary students cooking up omelets at the omelet station. I was like, I need to just make the most of this. And then at the session right after breakfast, they announced that David Taylor would be teaching the next session. So I was like thrilled. I was like, this is what it's all been building up to. Session starts, and he's teaching his famous ankle pick. And I'd seen it like hundreds and hundreds of times, but I was still absorbing it like a sponge. I was watching all the nuances and hearing how he puts pressure in certain angles, and it was really illuminating for me. During the session, I thought to myself, I'm like, this guy seems pretty cool. I was like, maybe I could get a little one-on-one wrestling time with him. So I wait till after the session, and a lot of the kids at the camp, they're like taking pictures with him, shaking hands, and I waited to the end because I wanted to wrestle with him. I was really building up the courage. I was like, I could do this, and I felt for the first time I wasn't that scared kid anymore. That was just trying to hide behind my brother and sister. And I get to the moment where I meet David. I shake his hand, and I'm like playing it cool. So I get it out, and I'm like, "You want to wrestle?" So he's like, "Sure, yeah, I'll wrestle." So we start wrestling. I don't know if he was going easy on me or whatever, but I was like, I'm doing pretty well. This is surprising. So I start picking it up a little bit. I'm like, I think maybe I could take this guy down, and then he starts picking it up a bit, and we're really wrestling. And then in a moment, I forget who I'm wrestling with, and I just felt my body move, it like twisted in such a way that I never felt before. And I felt like all the omelet and the cereal and all this in my belly just like twisting up into this crazy concoction, and I have to fart, and I just can't hold it in. But you wouldn't believe it. It was actually much more than a fart. I shit my pants while wrestling my idol.
Oh, dear. How sad. So what happened then? I mean, did he just flee, or how
he
did it?
he was we so after that I he took me down, and then he was like, "Dude, that smells really bad." And I just didn't know what to do. I was like, "Yeah, I think I'm gonna run to the bathroom," and I basically just ran off, and I just escaped that situation. I was like, "I need to get out of here,"
And that was it.
and that was it. Yeah,
Oh, that's tough.
yeah.
That's tough.
But I think it was at that moment for the first time where I was like, maybe going to Penn State and becoming a wrestling coach isn't the life for me.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, I ended up going to school in New York, and things really switched gears, and I got into art and music. It's so funny because as a kid, the things that I was so afraid of, like embarrassing myself,
Mm-hmm.
I was imagining saying the wrong thing, tripping over my words, getting too excited. And that's what I was so afraid of. And in this moment, the most embarrassing thing possible happened. You know, I shit myself while talking to my idol.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and it made me realize that it's just a funny story.
It is. Yeah, and it's
You know, even the most embarrassing thing. And that's the way I live my life now. It's like if I feel afraid about the possible outcomes of a situation, like how I might embarrass myself, I just think about in the future, this is going to be a great story. Let me just
right.
not be afraid of what's going to happen. Let me just do it. And then if it works out, it works out. If it doesn't, it's a funny ass story.
Right. Right. So, well, that was a great story, a great denouement, and yeah, I won't forget it either. So listen, thank you so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it was my pleasure. Bye bye.
Bye bye.
Are you ready to tell your own story on The Compulsive Storyteller? We're launching a new segment of guest storytelling, and we want to hear your stories. Email a voice recording to hello@thecompulsivestoryteller.com. I'll play selected stories on upcoming episodes. Try to be as clear as possible in your recording, and we reserve the right to lightly edit them for length and clarity. Leave your name or contact information in your voicemail or email, and let us know if you'd like the story to be anonymous. I can't wait to hear from you. The Compulsive Storyteller is now co-produced by Greg Lefebvre and Fadia Montserrat, who's also arranged the music and created the special effects. Emily Ramon does design, research, editing, and marketing. Peter Kokoma has made our theme music and for many seasons co-produced the show with me. If you enjoyed this week's episode, let us know. You can find us on Instagram and Facebook at The Compulsive Storyteller, and we'd love to hear from you. This podcast is independently produced, so we really appreciate all your help and support. Share the show with your friends, subscribe on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts, and please leave a review. You can also check out our website, thecompulsivestoryteller.com, for more information. Thanks for listening, and if you didn't like this one, the next one will be another story. All characters and events portrayed in this podcast are based on my truth, with some names and facts changed for privacy. The conversations and dialogues are based on my best memory, but are not word-for-word recreations.